Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name's Amelia and today we're going to be talking about how much reading you actually need to be doing as a writer, as an aspiring author, or even just as a normal person. I feel like a lot of people have this weird notion that there is a specific amount that people need to be reading each year or month or week in general, and I'm here to already tell you just the majority of this video is going to be about me telling you that there is no set amount, but I will be offering a little bit more insight. So before we get into this, as you know, I am very fond of putting my timestamps in the description of my video below. I feel like it helps people, and to be honest, if I go to certain videos, especially ones that are like how to or that answer some kind of question, I really do like being able to jump to the parts that I'm most interested in. So I'm going to be listing the timestamps below, and I'm going to read the sections off to you real quick, so let me just do that. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is what does reading really do for writers or for us in general. Then I will follow that with how often I personally read, followed by how often other authors read, and what kinds of things that writers or just anybody should be reading. And I will also tie in some book recs, and then I will also share a few other things that I've been reading, and I will put, again, most of my book recs and the things that I have been reading, I'll put in the description below just so that way you can get an idea of what's out there if you want to just jump to the answers. So without further ado, let's just begin this video. I always run out of breath whenever I talk. I go so fast. So what does reading really do for us? You know, everybody hears all the time that if you want to be a great writer, if you want to be intelligent, if you want to be successful, you need to read. And it's interesting because so many studies have been done to prove that CEOs, entrepreneurs, successful writers and authors, and just successful people in general tend to read a bunch, like a lot. And I'm about to tell you why. So first of all, I want to put a small disclaimer lightly. For the rest of this video, I will be talking about if you are a writer, but that does not mean that you are disqualified from being applied to any of this knowledge. Okay, I don't even know what I'm saying there, but the point is that even if you're not an aspiring writer or author or whatever, or you're not a CEO, entrepreneur, you know, you're just none of those things, you're just an ordinary person. Nobody's ordinary, so if you think you're ordinary, you're already wrong. But still, if you're just a normal person just watching this video to figure out like how often you should be reading, this totally still applies to you. But I'm going to be talking about authors and talking to my writers in general, just because sake of brevity, so I don't have to keep naming off types of people for the rest of this video. So, what does reading really do for writers and people in general? Well, so I actually did a little bit of research prior to this video, and I'm going to try to remember it. I should have written a lot of things down, so I might ramble. I'm really hoping this video isn't a bunch of rambling, but here, let's just dive in. So, first of all, reading makes you smarter because it opens your mind to the diversity that exists in our world. And I think this has become very evident to me recently because of the books I've been reading. I have been reading a lot more nonfiction and a lot of books that have to do with the human experience and human existence, and I feel like those specific works have kind of opened my eyes to realize that everything that we read has some kind of cultural tie, and it says something about humanity. And I've also been exploring the idea of reading books from other places, and again, it's just a really great way to open your mind to other experiences and other places in the world and just different topics, like in general. Of course, there's other reasons that reading is great for you, especially if you're a writer. I mean, for one, it's your escape. It's what you love. If you love writing, you're gonna love reading. It's an escape, it's a whole new world, and it's a great way to gain inspiration. I absolutely love gaining inspiration from other places. I will read books in like the fantasy genre, for example, and it just opens my eye, my third eye, I don't know, it opens something, and I start thinking, wow, that would be such a great idea to implement in my own story, and maybe I'll tweak it a little bit, you know, to be creative, but it's a great way to kind of gain that inspiration and gain that passion. Now, of course, reading does so much more for you than just opening up cultural awareness and giving you an escape. It's a way of education, it's a way of communication, a way to feel connected to everything around you, and it's just plain fun. I mean, reading is just, It's so great. It depends on what you're reading, of course. I think fiction and fantasy, sci-fi, that stuff is purely for entertainment. I say purely, but I don't know if it's necessarily purely. It's a great way to just kind of get the gears rolling in your head too when it comes to possibilities and thoughts and such. When it comes to nonfiction or just science and math and basically stuff that's like kind of like this video actually, those books help teach you something and they guide you along through a thought process and kind of come to some kind of conclusion that helps you see the world in a different way. And I think that that is incredible. Moving on from what reading does for us, to answer a big question that I've been getting asked tons recently, like, why are you all asking this? Is it like super important? I don't know why. How often do I read? And I'm going to tell you that my goal is about an hour every single day. So I set aside an hour at night, usually after my phone enters downtime because I don't want to be on my phone for the last 2 hours that I'm awake. Then I end up reading. So each night I read for about an hour, or at least that's the goal. I don't always do that. It kind of depends on what's going on. For example, Halloween was very recent to me filming this video. I don't know when this video is going to come out, but before, it was like a couple days ago. So Halloween was not too long ago, and did I read that night? No, I stayed up watching horror movies, eating junk food, and spending time with my boyfriend. I did not read. So it kind of depends on the day, and of course Halloween is like an exception because it's a holiday, but like there are days where I just don't feel like it and I just don't read and I'll do something else. But typically, and more often than not, I read for about an hour every night. So this brings me to my next thing, which is how much do I read in that hour? And honestly, it kind of depends. It depends on the complexity of the book or the thing I'm reading. Okay, so let me just put this out here. I don't read on a Kindle like almost ever. Maybe if I was on like an airplane or at an airport I would, but I don't really use my Kindle. I have one. I got it years and years ago, so it's a really old Kindle, but I don't read on a Kindle anymore. I used to do it a lot when I was younger and I would take it to school because I thought it was cool, but I really do like reading physical books more often than not, just because I don't know, it's a way to break away from technology and it feels more authentic to me, and I also just love collecting books, so you know. Also, we do a lot of reading throughout the day. I read tons and tons of articles all the time online. I don't count that as my reading. I literally just count physical books as my reading. So, there's that. So, how much do I read in that hour? And again, like I said, it depends on complexity, ease of the novel, how much I'm interested in it. I would say I have a pile of books next to me, so forgive me as I make a bunch of noise. This book I cranked through really quickly. It has like 340 something pages, and I cranked through it in like 2 or 3 nights. I think it was 3 nights. And I read for a little bit more than an hour each night, but it was an easy thing to read. Whereas this book that I've read recently was really big, and I mean, okay, it's big, but like it was more complex to get through. The ideas were a bit tough, I don't know, but it took a lot longer to get through this one. It took me a while. I actually ended up reading other books during that time too, because it was one of those books that really did take me a while to get through. And I want to express here that I am not a fast reader. I'm not. I love writing, I'm a quick writer, but I am not a fast reader. I'm fast enough, but you know, like fast enough to read a book if I was assigned one for school and be able to finish it by the deadline, but like, you know, I'm not that fast. And so for me, when it comes to goals as to like how many books I want to read throughout the year, it's anywhere from 12 to 24 depending on what I think I can achieve. And to be honest, for the beginning of this year, the first almost 6 months, first 5 months, I was actually in school, so I didn't read as many books while I was in school because I read more short stories and did school assignments, and therefore I read more the past 7 months as far as physical books go than I did before that. So I'm going to be telling you how many books and things that I've read, so that way you can get an idea, and again, I'll list all of these things below, and if you want to skip to the next section about how often other authors read, by all means do that if you want, but I'm going to tell you about what I have read this past year. So actually, I'm going to start out with the short stories that I read, and I have it listed in my little journal because in the beginning of the year while I was in school, we focused heavily on short stories. And so pretty much all of my writing classes were focused on short story. Alright, so I'm going to list the short stories that I read for my English classes. So I read Bartleby the Scrivener, The Metamorphosis, The Juniper Tree, The Yellow Wallpaper, A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings, Rape Fantasies, Death of a Salesman, and The Dumbwaiter. And those are the few that I remember, and to be honest, I could not remember everything I read, so I used this big book, this big baby. It has a lot of those stories in it, and I know I read more than those, but I can't remember all the ones I read. To be honest, I really didn't like a lot of them. There's a lot that I don't quite remember their names, but I used them in school, so I just listed the ones that I could remember, and I'm letting you know that a lot of them are in here. And of course I read Big Bang, and I also read Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. I read that by Yuval Harari, and that was earlier in the year as well. And that was just on my own time because I really enjoyed the topic. And so as for other books that I have read this year, I read Celtic Tales of Magic and Enchantment, which I read Circe by Madeline Miller, Educated by Tara Westover, I don't know how you pronounce her name. As I mentioned before, The Evolution of God by Robert Wright, Full Moon by Jim Butcher, Flyboys by James Bradley, and I am currently reading The Moral Animal, Why We Are the Way We Are by Robert Wright. So that's what I have read this past year, and in total for physical books, because I'm like all over the place, that was about 6 or 7 books, and that's, you know, about one a month actually, except we're just at the beginning of November, so a little bit more than one a month since school. So I don't track how much I read, in all honesty. I just kind of read. I don't really track how much I do, so it seems kind of strange. I typically just try to make sure that I'm constantly reading something, and like I said before, different books and different complexities and such will take a different amount of time, and therefore my reading could take a little bit longer. Alright, so moving on. How often do other authors read? I tried really hard to look up how often other authors read. And of course the first one I went to was Neil Gaiman because he is my favorite, and I was looking up a lot of interviews that he had and he doesn't really mention a specific number. And I think that's how it is with most artists and most writers in general, authors. They don't really mention a specified amount, and I know why. And the reason is because it's, first of all, if you read less than another author, people might have a weird opinion about you, or if you read too much, it might be a little exaggerated, or it'd be hard for other people to achieve. But I think the main reason is just because they don't track it, or they don't really think about, oh, I need to read 60 books this year. Like, nobody thinks that. They just read because it's fun, because it's great to learn. And I think that we all need to have that approach when it comes to reading. Everybody that I've talked to who've asked me about reading, I don't tell them how much they should read, which is why I mentioned that at the beginning of this video. There is no set amount. And I think the main thing to learn or take away from this video is that you need to just continuously read. Like, always be reading something. If it takes you a month to crank through a book, so be it. If it takes you 3 days, awesome. I mean, it doesn't matter how many books you read a year or how long it takes you to get through one. What matters is that you're trying to read every single day. When I did look up how much other authors read, I did come out to find that most authors read about 1 to 3 hours a day from some sort of book or text. Usually it's in the form of a physical book or like an ebook, and they don't count articles online as reading, but some people did. A lot of CEOs counted articles as their daily reading, and they would read articles in the morning while they're having their breakfast or something, and they would read like anywhere from 5 to 10, or at least just read for like a constant hour, 30 minutes to an hour. So reading looks different for everybody, and it depends on what you qualify as your reading time. Again, I qualify physical books as my reading time, not articles or online books typically. And of course, in this video I did count my short stories as reading. for the sake of the video, but I don't actually count my short stories as reading. I probably could. I mean, The Metamorphosis is practically a novella, but I still don't count it as reading for some reason because that's just who I am. Again, you can count that. There's nothing wrong with that. So when people ask me how many books I've read this year, I will be like 6, you know, like 7, versus including all of the other things. So what kinds of things should writers be reading? Good question. I think that honestly, just getting a diverse range of texts is what is best for any aspiring author or anyone in general. I think that really reading stuff that challenges you and that gives you a perspective of life that you did not consider before is the best way to grow. And it's kind of hard. Some people don't like to do that because then if you're reading out in public or something, your book will not showcase the belief that you may hold. So that's what I mean by kind of challenging yourself. Also, this year I got into nonfiction and I also tried my second ever memoir because I just never really liked memoirs, so I tried it and I really enjoyed it. And normally I would read fantasy or like some kind of magical thing, so Circe was kind of in that field, but I really tried to expand my horizons, and I think that that's something that we really need to do as writers, authors, as everyday people. You need to read things that are part of nonfiction and fiction. Read fantasy, sci-fi, read short stories, read poetry, go out and read books on science and art and music. Just really branch out and look for different things. So to end this video, I feel like this is super long, so I'm gonna have to do a lot of cutting, but to end this video out, I wanted to give you a few book recommendations about writing. So if you want to become a better writer or a better reader, you can read these books. It's mostly focused and geared towards my aspiring authors out there, but I'm going to give you these book recommendations that I've read and I think are really helpful. And I don't know if it'll answer your question on how many books you need to read because, again, I'm being kind of vague about it. I'm just telling you that you just need to read every day, and however much you read is up to you. But I do think these books are really good to read, and that is On Writing by Stephen King, Zen and the Art of Writing by Ray Bradbury, and Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit by Stephen Pressfield. So I definitely think you should read those books to help you become a better writer and to give you an idea of where to draw inspiration and stuff. So without further ado, because I have spent forever rambling on this video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below if you want to see more writing content like this or if you are just interested in other things. I'd also love to know what you're currently reading, how often you read, and what your thoughts are on this video in general. So please be sure to leave all those things in the comments, and I will catch you next time.